Everyone knows Galileo pointed a telescope at the sky and got in trouble with the church. What they don't tell you is how they broke him. Not with fire or the rack, but with something far more twisted. Psychological warfare that lasted 22 years. House arrest sounds gentle until you learn what it really meant. A brilliant mind slowly crushed under the weight of isolation, threats, and the constant fear that one wrong word would bring the executioner's flames. This is the story of how the Roman Inquisition destroyed the man who proved the earth moves around the sun. If you value documented historical stories like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Vatican's secret archives and Galileo's personal correspondence. Now back to the story. 1633. Rome. The Palace of the Holy Office stands like a fortress in the heart of the Eternal City. Inside its walls, a 69-year-old man kneels before 10 cardinals dressed in red. His name is Galileo Galilei. His crime, writing a book that suggests the Earth orbits the Sun. The punishment they're about to deliver will be worse than death. Cardinal Vincenzo Maculani reads the sentence. House arrest for life. No visitors without permission, no writing about astronomy, no teaching, complete isolation until death. The old astronomer's hands shake as he signs his confession. I abjure, curse, and detest my errors. 22 words that save his life but destroy his soul. You think house arrest means staying home and reading books. For Galileo, it meant something else entirely. The Inquisition chose his prison carefully, a villa outside Florence called Il Gioiello. Beautiful name for a cage. 3 rooms, no students allowed, no letters without approval. Guards watching every move. His daughter Virginia, a nun called Sister Maria Celeste, becomes his only connection to the outside world. She writes him letters filled with love and worry. He saves everyone. The mental torture begins immediately. Galileo had spent his life surrounded by brilliant minds, debating ideas, teaching students. Now silence. His letters to friends must be approved by censors. They read every word, looking for signs of forbidden thinking. He learns to write in code. When he mentions the motion of the Earth, he calls it that opinion. When he discusses his telescopic discoveries, he speaks of those observations. Fear creeps into every sentence. 1634. 1 year into his sentence. His daughter Virginia dies suddenly at age 33. The guards won't let him attend her funeral, won't let him visit her grave. The woman who kept him sane through letters and secret visits is gone. Galileo writes to a friend, I feel immense sadness and melancholy. Together with extreme loss of appetite, I am hateful to myself. The Inquisition has taken his freedom, his work, and now his greatest love. The psychological pressure intensifies. Spies report on every conversation. Neighbors are questioned about his activities. When he tries to write about mathematics, supposedly safe territory, the Inquisition warns him that any writing might be considered suspicious. His mind, once free to explore the cosmos, becomes trapped in an ever-shrinking box of permissible thoughts. 1636. 3 years in. Galileo goes nearly blind. The irony cuts deep. The man who saw farther than anyone before him can barely see his own hands. Some historians suggest the stress and isolation accelerated his condition. His eyes, which discovered Jupiter's moons and Saturn's rings, now fail him when he needs them most. He begs for permission to see doctors in Florence. The request takes months to approve, but here's where the story gets truly cruel. Even blind and broken, Galileo can't stop thinking. His greatest work, 2 New Sciences, emerges from these dark years. He smuggles the manuscript to Holland through underground networks. The book revolutionizes physics and engineering. Written in a prison of the mind by a man forbidden to teach, it becomes his masterpiece. The Inquisition tried to silence him but couldn't kill his genius. If you value documented historical stories like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. The guards report everything. What he eats, who visits, what books he reads. They note when he walks in his small garden and for how long. Every detail feeds back to the Holy Office in Rome. Cardinal Antonio Barberini, Pope Urban VIII's nephew, personally reviews reports about Galileo's daily activities. A man who once dined with popes and cardinals now lives like a dangerous criminal under constant surveillance. The daily routine becomes a prison ritual. Galileo wakes at dawn. 2 guards escort him to morning prayers. Breakfast consists of bread, watered wine, and whatever vegetables his housekeeper can afford. The guards watch him eat, noting if he leaves food uneaten, a sign of possible illness or despair. Every bite becomes evidence in their endless files. His library shrinks weekly. Books disappear without explanation. First his astronomical texts, then anything by Protestant authors, finally even classical works that mention celestial observations. Ptolemy's Almagest vanishes one morning. Copernicus's De Revolutionibus follows the next week. By 1635, his once magnificent collection of 800 volumes has been reduced to 43 approved texts, mostly religious commentaries and mathematics primers suitable for children. The writing restrictions grow more absurd. Galileo requests permission to write a letter thanking a friend for sending fruit. The censors take 6 weeks to approve it. They remove his mention of the sweetness of the gift, because sweetness might be interpreted as a coded reference to the satisfaction of forbidden knowledge. The letter that finally reaches his friend contains just 12 words. Thank you for the fruit. May God bless your kindness. Galileo. 1638, 5 years in, Galileo petitions to visit his hometown of Pisa. The request is denied. He asks to attend Mass in Florence. Denied. He begs to see his son Vincenzo, who lives just 20 miles away. The permission comes with conditions. 1 week only, no public appearances. Guards must accompany him everywhere. Every moment of freedom requires negotiation with his captors. The isolation works exactly as intended. Galileo's letters from this period reveal a broken spirit. I have 2 plagues, old age and blindness. These would be bearable if I could share them with friends. But friends are exactly what the Inquisition won't allow. Former students fear to contact him. Fellow scientists avoid his name in their writings. The man who once commanded respect across Europe becomes a ghost haunting his own life. The social death proves more devastating than physical imprisonment. Professor Bonaventura Cavalieri, who developed new methods of calculating areas and volumes based on Galileo's work, publishes his revolutionary mathematics without mentioning his teacher's name, not from ingratitude, but from terror. A single reference to Galileo could destroy Cavalieri's career and bring Inquisition attention to his own work. Even gratitude becomes too dangerous to express. The mail system becomes weaponized. Every letter sent to or from Il Gioiello passes through 3 separate censorship stages. First, local priests read and copy each message. Then, diocesan officials review the copies for hidden meanings. Finally, Roman cardinals examine anything deemed suspicious. A simple inquiry about Galileo's health takes an average of 47 days to reach him and 63 days for his response to return. Friendship dies in bureaucratic delays. The telescope torture begins in 1635. The Inquisition allows Galileo to keep his instruments, but forbids him from using them for astronomical observation. He can look at terrestrial objects, birds, distant hills, ships on the Arno River, but pointing the lens toward heaven is strictly prohibited. The guards check his telescope's position every evening. The tool that made him famous becomes a monument to his defeat. Musical persecution follows. Galileo had always loved the lute, inherited from his father Vincenzo, a renowned music theorist. The Inquisition confiscates the instrument after receiving reports that he plays melancholy songs. Music, they decide, might inspire dangerous emotions or provide coded communication with sympathizers. The silence in his villa grows deeper. No conversation, no music, no students, laughter. Only the scratch of guards, pens recording his every breath. Here's what makes the torture especially sophisticated. They let him keep working, but only on safe subjects. Mathematics, engineering, anything but astronomy. It's like letting a painter use every color except blue when their greatest masterworks were painted in blue. They didn't just imprison his body, they amputated his intellectual soul piece by piece. 1640, 7 years in, news reaches Galileo that his theories are spreading across Protestant Europe. Dutch scientists use his telescopes. German mathematicians cite his work. English philosophers debate his ideas. The very knowledge the Inquisition tried to suppress grows stronger outside Italy's borders. But Galileo will never know the full impact of his revolution. He dies before science fully validates his vision. The psychological breakdown accelerates. Galileo's letters become increasingly desperate. He writes to Grand Duke Ferdinand II, "I live in perpetual melancholy and no longer take pleasure in anything." The man who once pointed his telescope at Jupiter and saw 4 moons dancing around it now stares at walls and counts the hours until death. 1641. 8 years in, Galileo's health collapses completely. Hernia, arthritis, insomnia. His body mirrors his broken spirit. The Inquisition finally allows him to see better doctors, but only because they fear he might die before his sentence is complete. They want him to suffer longer, not become a martyr. The spy network grows tighter. Father Christoph Scheiner, a Jesuit astronomer who once debated Galileo about sunspots, now reports his activities to Rome. Every conversation is monitored. Every letter is copied. The Holy Office builds a file on Galileo that grows thicker each month. 357 documents survive in the Vatican archives, each one a small knife cutting away his freedom. The financial torture begins. Galileo's pension from the University of Padua is suspended. His savings dwindle. He can't teach private students, can't publish books. The man who once commanded enormous fees for his mathematical lectures now depends on charity from his few remaining friends. His son Vincenzo must secretly send money. Even his basic survival becomes a tool of control. 1639. 6 years in, Galileo attempts to write his autobiography. The Inquisition confiscates the manuscript after just 3 chapters. They fear he might defend his scientific work or criticize the Church's treatment of him. His own life story becomes forbidden territory. He learns that even his memories are not his own. The health surveillance intensifies. Every illness is documented. Every treatment is approved or denied. When Galileo suffers severe pain from a hernia, the Inquisition initially refuses to let him see a surgeon. They fear he might use medical visits to pass messages to supporters. His physical suffering becomes another layer of their control system. Father Vincenzo Ranieri, one of Galileo's former students, tries to visit. The meeting requires 6 months of paperwork and 3 letters of approval from different cardinals. When the visit finally happens, 2 guards remain in the room the entire time. Ranieri later writes, "Speaking with the master felt like whispering in a tomb. His spirit is broken, but his mind still burns with questions he cannot ask." The book burning begins, not just Galileo's works, but any text that mentions his discoveries. The Inquisition's index of forbidden books grows longer. Libraries across Catholic Europe remove volumes that reference Jupiter's moons or Venus's phases. They try to erase not just the man, but the very knowledge he brought to light. 1640, 7 years in, Galileo learns that his former student Evangelista Torricelli has invented the barometer. The news brings brief joy, then crushing sadness. He realizes he will never again experience the thrill of scientific discovery or guide young minds toward truth. The Inquisition has stolen not just his present, but his scientific future. The correspondence restrictions become absurd. Galileo wants to write a letter of congratulation to Torricelli. The censors demand to review it first. The letter takes 4 months to approve and arrives with entire paragraphs blacked out. Even expressions of pride in a student's success are considered dangerous. Here's where the psychological warfare becomes truly diabolical. The Inquisition allows rumors to spread that Galileo might be released if he shows proper repentance. Hope becomes torture. He writes increasingly desperate letters to Cardinal Francesco Barberini, begging for mercy, promising never to discuss astronomy again. Each letter degrades his dignity further. Each rejection breaks his spirit more completely. The winter of 1640 brings the harshest isolation yet. Snow blocks the roads to Il Gioiello. For 3 months, no visitors can reach him even if they had permission. Galileo sits alone in his villa, nearly blind, forbidden from the work that defined his life. His housekeeper, Cecilia Boccaneri, later testifies that she often found him weeping over his astronomical instruments. The cruelest irony emerges. While Galileo suffers in isolation, his ideas spread across Protestant Europe like wildfire. Johannes Kepler publishes refined versions of Galileo's planetary motion theories. Dutch lensmakers improve his telescope designs. English natural philosophers debate his methods. The knowledge the Inquisition tried to suppress grows stronger everywhere beyond their reach. Cardinal Antonio Barberini visits Il Gioiello personally in early 1641, not to offer comfort, but to ensure the surveillance system is working properly. He inspects the guard posts, reviews the correspondence logs, and interviews the household staff. Galileo is not allowed to speak during the visit. He sits silently while his captor examines his cage. The theological mockery continues. Galileo must attend Mass every Sunday under guard supervision. The same church that celebrates his former friend Maffeo Barberini as Pope Urban VIII forces him to kneel and pray for forgiveness. The irony cuts deep. Urban had once praised Galileo's discoveries and invited him to Rome as an honored guest. The final manuscripts arrive through underground networks. Galileo's 2 New Sciences reaches printers in Holland via a chain of Protestant merchants and sympathetic scholars. The book that emerges from his imprisonment revolutionizes physics and engineering. Chapter 4 introduces the mathematical relationship between time and distance in falling objects. Chapter 7 describes the strength of materials under stress. Written by a prisoner, it becomes the foundation of modern engineering. The international response shocks the Vatican. French scholars openly defend Galileo's work. German universities teach his methods. Even some Catholic institutions quietly incorporate his discoveries into their curricula. The Inquisition realizes their torture has backfired spectacularly. Instead of silencing dangerous ideas, they have created a martyr whose reputation grows stronger with each passing month. The scientific underground emerges. Protestant merchants smuggle Galileo's writings across Alpine passes. Dutch printers publish his work in Latin, Italian, and German. English natural philosophers cite his methods in their research. René Descartes, working in Holland, builds entire philosophical systems on Galilean foundations. The knowledge the Church tried to suppress spreads like wildfire through Protestant Europe and the Ottoman Empire. Pierre Gassendi in France openly teaches that Jupiter has 4 moons. Johannes Hevelius in Poland publishes detailed lunar maps based on Galileo's observations. Isaac Beeckman in the Netherlands uses Galileo's mathematics to study falling bodies. Each new convert to the Copernican system proves that the Inquisition's torture has failed in its primary goal, containing dangerous knowledge. The Vatican's own astronomers begin private experiments. Father Giovanni Battista Riccioli, supposedly a loyal opponent of Galilean ideas, secretly uses improved telescopes to map lunar craters. His published work carefully avoids mentioning Galileo by name while incorporating dozens of his discoveries. The hypocrisy runs so deep that even Galileo's torturers benefit from his insights. The economic warfare intensifies. Galileo's pension from the University of Padua is permanently revoked. His savings of 3,000 gold florins, accumulated over decades of teaching and consulting, are frozen by Tuscan authorities under pressure from Rome. He must sell personal possessions to buy food. His mathematical instruments, once worth a fortune, are sold piece by piece to survive. Poverty becomes another chain binding him to despair. 1641. 8 years in, Galileo's final visitor arrives, his son, Vincenzo, now 31 years old. Father and son have barely spoken in 2 years. The guards allow them 4 hours together in the garden. Vincenzo later writes about finding his father bent like a broken tree, his eyes clouded with tears he can no longer shed. They discuss family matters and carefully avoid any mention of astronomy or mathematics. The deathbed surveillance begins months before the end. Father Ambrosio Macanzio reports that Inquisition agents are already planning how to handle Galileo's death. They fear his funeral might become a rally for supporters of the new science. Secret orders circulate to local officials. No public ceremonies, no speeches, no monuments. Even in death, he must remain a prisoner. The cruelest twist comes in his final year. Galileo discovers through a secret letter that Cardinal Maculani, the man who read his sentence, privately believes the Earth orbits the Sun. Other cardinals whisper similar thoughts in their private correspondence, later discovered in Vatican archives. The very men who condemned him know he was right. They destroyed him, not for being wrong, but for being right too loudly, too publicly, too dangerously for their power structure. The last months bring physical and mental collapse. Galileo can barely hold a pen. His handwriting, once precise and elegant, becomes a shaky scrawl. The man who mapped the moon's craters and tracked Jupiter's dance can no longer see the food on his plate. His final letter, dictated to his housekeeper, contains just 11 words. I am old, blind, and broken. May God forgive us all. January 8th, 1642. Galileo Galilei dies at Il Gioiello, age 77. The Inquisition forbids a public funeral. No monument, no eulogy. His body lies in an unmarked grave for nearly a century. Even in death, they try to erase him. The guards remain at the villa for 3 days after his death, ensuring no supporters can steal papers or create memorial gatherings. But here's the late reveal that changes everything. In 1992, exactly 350 years after Galileo's death, Pope John Paul II formally apologizes. The Vatican admits Galileo was right. The torture wasn't justified by faith or science. It was the desperate act of an institution terrified of losing control. They broke the man, but couldn't break the truth. The commission studying Galileo's case discovers that Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, the chief theologian who initially condemned him, had written private letters expressing doubt about the Church's position on astronomy. The instruments of torture were never physical. No rack stretched his limbs, no fire burned his flesh. Instead, they used isolation, fear, surveillance, and the systematic destruction of everything that made life worth living. They proved that the cruelest torture leaves no visible scars, but cuts deeper than any blade. The Earth moves. It always did.